Alright, look, we're making a tier list. All of the free champions that have ever been around for raid, excluding Doom Tower. I didn't include that. Why? Great question. There's so many bad ones. The difficulties of them are not even across the board. Some people get stuck on Bommel for like ever. Same thing with Dark Fae. There are just so many niche bosses that people can't pass, so I decided just to not add it because it takes forever to get them. But every other free champion we have here, we're going to put them, see who's good, see who isn't as good, so let's get it. What up, team? It is MurderInc here. We're here making a tier list, something that I never do because they're always terrible, but I found some common ground. I'm okay with doing this. I think it's fine to do it this way, so let's just dive into it because we got some things to do. So the first champion we're going to start with is going to be the most recent, which is going to be Ronda, easy S tier. Why is Ronda an easy S tier? Now, Ronda, pumper kit, does really good damage, has an awesome kit, crazy for arena, one of the first champions in a very long time that has found endgame use. And they've been really good with this recently because quite a few of these free champions have endgame use, but Ronda specifically, passive is fantastic, ignoring it, countering one of the most annoying champions in the game being Rhodos here. Block passive skills, where else do we see that from Ramantu? So all of these things you have to consider for sure. A1, triple hit, extra hit if they're under 50% HP, I mean, there's really no discussion here. This is an S tier champion through and through. Great base stats, health is a little bit low, defense is fine, speed is fantastic. She is a strong champion, very, very good. She is going to be the first one that has been added to the S tier list. Now next, since we're already here, let's just go ahead and talk about, we're not doing fusions, those are not considered free champions. The next is going to be Lordly Legionary. Login champion, extra hit if under heal reduction. People were like, okay, this could be good for Fire Knight, reflect damage, continuous heal. He's okay, right? He didn't really live up to his own standards because of one fact and one fact alone. He's blue affinity, and if you look at how he works, how important his buffs are, and the kind of downside of him having a strong affinity against him, is he's really hard to keep alive on stage 24, stage 20, which are crucial progression stages. Most players will be farming stage 20 for a long time, and you can't even use them there. Efficiency-wise, it's not worth 21, 22, 23. 24 is okay, but once again, that's red affinity. He's not going to work out well. Can work out for stage 25, but it's a bit hard to add him into a team because of his stats. So, with that being the case, he's definitely not one of the worst champions ever, but he's by no means a vault champion. So, Lordly Legionary is going to be a B tier champion. Why don't I have a C tier champion? Because C and under is going to be vault tier. What does vault tier mean? Vault tier doesn't mean the champions are unusual. Every champion in this game, and you'll understand that if you've been playing for a long time, has a use somewhere. No champion is useless. There is no way anyone will ever win an argument like that against me because I've used almost every single champion somewhere with overpowered gear, with overpowered synergy. Doesn't matter, it's not cheating. There's no single champion content in this game, which is why tier lists for this game generally suck. The reason why this works is because we're taking a niche category of free only and seeing how good they are overall, right? If we want to say how good are all free champions, the answer is you can use all of them at least somewhere. But enough of that semantic on tier list. Moving on to the next champion. I do believe that's it for Bannerlords. So, Arbiter. How good's Arbiter, everybody? Arbiter is S tier. Turn meter boost, attack up, heal, revive, strip buff, weaken, speed aura. Need I say more? 110 base speed, 21,000 HP. It doesn't get any more S tier than Arbiter. So Arbiter is going to be S tier. Can you use her anywhere? Yeah, I've done Clan Boss with her, Doom Tower, Hydra, 3v3. I've used this champion everywhere. So that factor alone is what makes her S tier for sure. Next we have Aleksandr. He was a promotion champion. You cannot get him anymore, but he's worth talking about. Freeze on the A1. Chance increased for a certain faction. That's okay. defense down, 100% chance when booked. Also does a weaken if it's from Orc and Ogryn. Not a huge fan of the Orc and Ogryn part, but he is an AoE defense down champion. Attacks one enemy, removes all buffs from the targets, and then finally increases ally accuracy in all battle by 60%. So essentially he's a universal defense down champion. There is a champion you can farm that's a rare, being War Maiden, that you can get in this game. She's a red affinity. She's considered really strong early game. This guy was free, so he was also considered really strong by anyone smart in the early game. However, as soon as you move to that mid-game level, his value just tanks. And that when I say tanks, I mean tanks. So, unfortunately, I cannot give him anything, but he's going to go into the B tier. He would even become a vault tier later on, but he has his uses in faction wars, so I can't rule that out completely. The next champion we have is going to be Deliana. Deliana has an AoE leech with the chance in the A1, very strong ability for an A1. We have a decrease res on one target if they're under block buffs, also applies debuff spread, taking any decreased resistance and spreading it to all of the enemies. Decreased resistance is good, but it's not great. There aren't a lot of wave champions with very high res. You can consider Doom Tower, but that's a very niche use that you have to be progressing the game to a certain point to be able to use it. Moving on to the A3, attack all enemies, 75% chance of putting block buffs on each enemy, so an AoE block buffs. Heals all allies by 5% of their max HP for block buffs placed. Fills this champion's turn meter for each block buff attempt that was blocked or resisted by the enemy. So decent, nothing crazy AoE block buff. Booked to 100% of course. Moving on to the passive, increases this champion's accuracy by 2 for every 1000 HP this champion has. So it can only get so high, right? We're not getting an insane amount of accuracy from this champion because, in all honesty, it's going to be very hard to stack like 100,000 HP on this champion, whereas normal HP champions, it's rather easy to do that. Why is it going to be harder for this champion? Her base HP is kind of low for one, and she has lots of debuffs that kind of make her worth using, so you need accuracy on top of just stacking health, or you're not going to have enough to do any down the road content, right? Active effect places a strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns every time this champion's HP drops below 50. So good all around. I would say this is a little bit better than someone like the champions you talked about so far. So Deliana is going to be our first A tier entry. I will also note that her base speed is kind of low, even though her defense is rather strong. The next champion we have is going to be Mr. RelicKeeper, a champion that pretty much everyone has when starting this game here. He's a king for sure in the campaign. This dude pumps, he hits very hard, but again, as soon as you leave that campaign threshold, this guy, you can use him in faction wars, but he pretty much sucks. So he's not going to be a vault tier. I would still say he's a B tier champion. Actually, I don't even know if I can say that. He's probably the first vault tier champion, RelicKeeper. He's a fun champion to play with for sure. But like I said, his value after the campaign is just so low because where are you going to use him? I mean, you can use him in the arena, but there are so many better champions that you can use than this guy. Because you're placing an attack up, you're giving yourself an extra turn here, and I don't know. If you start killing too many people, then you probably are in an arena rank way too low for where you should be. But in theory, his kit is really good, so I will give him that. I mean, just look at his aura. Ally attack in campaign battles by 40%. This guy's made for the campaign. But I have to give him Vault because his use outside of that is little to none, unfortunately. Moving on to the barbarians, we have Scyl of Drakes. Scyl of Drakes, decreased speed, decreased turn meter, AoE stun, double hit, revive ally protection, heals all allies at the start of each turn, places increased speed on a random ally for 2 turns. Don't need to talk about this one too much. He is going to be S tier for sure. As far as free champions go, there's just no debate here. Great kit, great stats, defense is high, health is a little bit low, speed's a little bit low, but we don't care because her kit is just amazing. The next one we have is going to be High Khatun here. Decreased speed A1, turn meter fill, increased speed, AoE turn meter down, which is nice, and increased speed in all battles. Probably the first increased speed in all battles that you do get. She can have use in clan boss teams, pre-made clan boss teams, and she's such a common champion. People took the time to do that, so I would say she's not vault material because she does have quite a few uses. She's going to fall under the A tier just because she's used in way more places than some of the champions listed below this. Next we have Guurda, one of the more recent login champions. 60% chance of applying debuff spread, taking one random debuff from the target and placing it on all enemies under weaken. Decrease the target's turn meter by 10% if they're not under any debuffs, that's okay. AoE weaken, okay after attacking, has a chance of placing 2 poisons on all enemies without weakened. These poisons cannot be blocked or resisted. Don't like this, I've talked about this before. That's not a good part of a kit, it's very counterintuitive. A3, 80% chance of removing 1 random buff from all enemies, then has an 80% chance of placing 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies. Also removes 2 random debuff from all allies. That's a lot. There's a lot here. There's so many conditions around this. But I'm going to say overall it's good. Cooldown 4 turns down to a 3 turn, so you can't complain too much. It's random buff. I don't like anything random in this game for obvious reasons. You guys probably don't either. Whenever an enemy receives a debuff, their turn meter is decreased by 3%. Problem with this is it's usually a champion's turn when they're debuffing you, so does it really matter if you're decreasing their turn meter when they're literally getting a turn debuffing you right then? So there's a few flaws with this. Yes, I understand not all champions have to have a turn to put a debuff. Like if you hit a champion and the passive says if this champion gets hit, then it applies a debuff. I understand that, but overall this, I don't know, not that great. But this champion still has some uses. Great base stats, 20,000 HP, 1300 defense, very beefy, 97 base speed here. Can have use in dungeons, faction wars for players. With that being said, we're putting her in the A tier. So let's put Guurda right there. And next we have the one, the only login reward champion, Ghrush the Mangler. 100% S tier before I even go over the kit. Leech on the A1, attack down chance, decrease crit damage chance, hard hitting A2, hard hitting A3, continuous heal, chance for an additional continuous heal if at least one enemy is hit with a crit, which they will be because you're crit capping this guy. This guy was a saving grace. I've said this since he's came out, since I started playing. He's so underrated and he's so good. Hits incredibly hard, insane healer. Give this guy War Master and he is a progression champion. I wouldn't say he's as good as Arbiter in the S tier, but as far as group synergy goes, he offers so much damage. Healing from Leech, healing from continuous heals, and boss damage. Not just AoE damage, because he does have AoE damage, but boss damage. He also has 2 AoE abilities. What does that mean? Optimal for a stun set. So there's just so much going for this champion. Good base stats for an epic, 19,000 health, 1300 defense, low speed, but that doesn't matter as much. So he's S tier for sure. Next we have Rhazin. He is an all-the-time fusion. Not the easiest to get, but much easier than quite a few things. He is a defense down, weaken, single target champion. Great for the clan boss, great for progression CC and an AoE level with 100% turn meter down from this A3. Triple hit A1. Really good boss damage. Stats, not the best. HP is low. Defense is on the higher side for sure, but very, very low base speed. The thing with Rhazin is he hits very, very hard. When I say very, very hard, I mean I can make this guy do more damage than a poisoner in the clan boss. Think about that. Dracomorph, Rhazin Scarhide. I can make Rhazin's A1s do, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, I did a video on this years ago, and he was in 100 million damage clan boss team with no poisoner. He was that role. It was just him placing defense down and weaken, triple hit for War Master damage, no poisons on the team, and I did 100 million damage 2 years ago. Just think about that for a second on Ultra Nightmare. So the fact that you can +4 this guy and max out his awakening, ascension, whatever you want to call this. Yeah, so just the fact that he's so good in certain niche spots, faction wars, dungeon progression, clan boss, probably not arena, so we can kind of count that out. He is going to be S tier. He's too good. If anything, he would be the best champion in the A tier or S tier, but I'm going to go ahead and put him in the S tier as of right now. Next, we have another all-the-time fusion being Broadmaw. 35% chance of freeze in the A1, increased crit rate, increased speed, turn meter fill. AoE, 2 champion revive with HP and block damage. On revive, aura doesn't matter. I mean, it does to an extent because this champion shines in Faction Wars. You needed Broadmaw in Faction Wars. Now you don't so much. There are definitely alternatives, but good base HP, not so good base defense, but really good base speed here. So this is going to be a B tier champion. Can be okay in early on progression, but really carries Faction Wars for sure. And anyone that only carries Faction Wars at a high level cannot be anything higher than B for me personally. Next, we have another login reward champion that's been buffed, Cleopterix. Weaken debuff for 2 turns on a single target, increases to 50% if they're under Hex. Perfect Veil on this champion if this kills an enemy while under Hex. Then we have an AoE, increase crit rate and crit damage on this champion. 75% chance up to 100 of placing block active skills on targets under Hex, so there's an obvious Hex interaction here. Increase accuracy buff, then an AoE, also with the chance of placing a Hex. 100% chance of placing a Fear instead on enemies already under Hex, which is going to be kind of hard to do since only this ability applies Hex. Counterattacks with default skill every time this champion loses 30% HP or more in a single turn. Always counterattacks if 2 or more allies are dead. So listen, champion's been buffed. I know people have figured out places to use her. Her value goes up too much when she's paired with another Hex champion, which is counterintuitive to the tier list I'm making here. So I'm going to have to say she is a vault tier champion. Now there are going to be some people who disagree with this. I already know. I get that for sure, especially after her buff, but I personally cannot put this champion any higher because of what she needs to work. And the next champion we're talking about here today is going to be the promotional ultimate Galek. Hard hitting A1, 50% chance of placing HP burn if it's under increase attack, turn meter fill on crit or non-crit. A2, pumper ability for sure, 50% chance of placing HP burn again if it's under attack up, decreases the turn meter and places attack up on this champion if this attack is critical, and the turn meter decrease if it's not critical. And finally, in AoE, each should having a 50% chance of placing the HP burn again. If this champion's under the attack up, each should has a 75% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter if they're under the HP burn. Finally, the passive fully heals this champion and instantly removes any stun debuffs when an enemy places a stun debuff on this champion. Kind of a weird passive to be honest, but it is what it is. Base stats, not that great. Low health, low defense, and the attack is kind of mid at best. Speed also, it's closer to the high end, but it's kind of mid tier once again. So this guy, you can make him work. He hits hard, like I said, quite a few times. HP burn is very strong for sure, but he's so niche that Ultimate Galek also enters the B tier. Next we have Drexthar. I was considering adding this guy, wasn't sure about it since he's a tag arena reward. It does take quite a long time to get him, but it's not the hardest to get him. And based on how good he is, it's worth talking about. Triple hit, HP burn, heal on the A1, provoke, decrease attack if there's a provoke, chance being 100% on HP burn, AoE on the A2, passive applies HP burn, has a stat, has resistance increase that stacks, accuracy aura, huge accuracy aura being 70, base stats really good, health okay, defense very high, speed mid. This guy carries the Doom Tower. There's really no other way to put it. He is pretty pivotal in progression there. So with that being said, he's either hard for me to put him at S tier based on the champions we see here. Everything has to be relevant to this. It's easy to say he's S tier, but it's hard to actually do it because while he's really strong in one area, he's not that strong in other places. So I'm going to have to put him on the A tier. But he's a really good champion. You can even use him as a defensive nuker. Probably wouldn't recommend it. There are definitely better options, but you could if you wanted to. Next, we have Scion here. He's a login reward. Block active skills, single target. Block buffs will ignore shield, heal reduction, remove all debuffs from this champion, then attacks enemies. Increased attack, increased crit damage. After attacking, enemies under block active, block buff, and heal reduction. Cannot decrease this champion's turn meter. This champion's garbage. We're just going to put it straightforward. He's a vault champion. So Scion goes here. Not much to talk about. Quite obvious for sure. However, now we have a login reward. Tainix Hateflower. Does this champion look different? Or has they always looked like this? I swear this got a model rework. Could be wrong though. A1, decrease speed, heal ally. A2, attack one enemy, decrease speed on all enemies if it's critical. This is what we want to talk about, the passive. Decrease the damage all allies receive by 5%. This champion receives it instead. We have an Faction Crypt HP Aura, 17k HP. Not the best, but okay for an epic. Defense, abysmally low, but it is what it is. Speed on the higher end for sure. Now, this champion sees a lot of play, has a lot of play, and is good for survivability, so bottom of the A tier for sure. Moving on to the undead, we have another recent ultimate Death Knight. You already know what he does. Provoke, increased chance against legendaries, AoE attack down, chance to fear against legendaries, shield, continuous heal, value of the shield proportional to defense. Whenever an ally is hit, 100% chance of completely blocking the attack. Basically, for single targeting an ally, it's redirected to this guy, and whenever an enemy is healed, it heals this champion by 20% of that heal. Increases this champion's HP, defense, and speed by 10% for each dead ally, and finally, defense in all battles. Amazing base stats, 20k HP, 1400 defense, 97, kind of mid speed, but this guy's S tier. Need I say more? We went over his kit. Next we have Dark Athel, another champion everyone gets. Defense down, single target, double hit, AoE decrease speed, AoE ability that has a different interaction if it kills 4 champions, 6 champions, or 10 champions. You would think it's good for Spider, but what happened? It's not good for Spider. Increases ally attack in all battles. Unfortunately, we don't want to talk about this one too much. This is going to be Vault. You hate to see it. It is a starter champion, but it is what it is. Next, we have Dark Elhain. Looks really cool. How do we do? A1, decrease the target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted. Not bad. Increased attack, then an AoE, decreased speed. Not bad. Fills this champion's turn meter by 25% and instantly activates Death's Majesty. Whenever a champion or ally receives freeze, what's Death's Majesty? This AoE right here instantly removes any freeze debuffs on this champions and replaces them with crit rate, crit damage, strengthen, whenever an enemy places a freeze debuff on this champion. So this was like the counter Torment champion back in the day, kind of now too. Base attack's kind of low, base speed's low, doesn't have the full crit damage base amount, but niche use, niche enough and strong enough for it to be a B tier champion. Next we have the Dark Elves, where I made the risky decision of adding Lydia. It's hard to get, I know, but we added her. A1, poison sensitivity, fear will counterattack if you pretty much hard CC any of your allies, which is really nice. AoE defense down, weaken, strengthen, and increase speed. This alone makes her S tier. Then we have an A2, poison sensitivity, block buffs and block active skills on a single target. Passive, denies enemy revive attempts. Like what? Revives them if this happens. Revives your teammates if your enemy tries to revive. This skill ignores block revive. Finally, a passive, 100 resistance in arena. Crazy base stats, 20k HP, 12, just under 1300 defense and 110 base speed here. S tier. No one's going to disagree here. She's very hard to get, which is why it was risky for me to add her. Moving on to the next champion, Visix. Double hit turn meter down, filling this champion's turn meter. AoE decrease speed and ally protection. AoE provoke and shield buff on this champion. Increase defense and faction crypts, whatever. Low HP, very high defense, mid-tier speed, but progression queen. If you have this champion and you've used her in dungeons, you know how strong she is. She's an incredible champion. She also goes into S tier because Visix can be used universally throughout every single dungeon because of her being void affinity and how good her decreased turn meter and ally protection is for keeping her team alive on top of the provoke she has. I'm not going to include MIthrala because unlike Faction Wars, I think Hydra's a little bit too new, but if you're curious, if I had to add MIthrala somewhere, she would be S tier for sure. Next we have Arix, one of the rather new ones. I personally just summoned this champion. First of all, looks amazing. We have an AoE A1, 25% chance of removing 1 buff from each target, not terrible. AoE chance of applying a stun, transfers a random debuff from this champion to the target that receives the stun, kind of niche, especially since the stun doesn't go up to 100%. Not a fan of anything that's that RNG. Ally protection, counter attack buff on this champion, which is okay. You really want more survivability than that, but it is what it is. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% each time an ally inflicts a critical hit. Okay. Heals this champion by 5% of their health each time an enemy inflicts a critical hit. The heal's good. The turn meter doesn't make a lot of sense because they're just going to be burning through their counter attack, losing value in this ability. Very good base HP though, 22, one of the higher ones in the game. Defense, okay. Speed, mid-level for sure. So with this being the case, there are some uses. The fact is, you get her so late into the game, it's hard to put her anywhere outside of B tier. Now, if you got her earlier in the game, I would say she's closer to S tier, but you just get her so far down the line that where you're really going to use her at that stage in the game. The next champion we have is going to be Ramantu, the addition to the Arbiter missions. This guy's kit, you can kind of read it on your own. The TLDR is he's really, really good in competitive arena, and that's it. And even in competitive arena, he has a very niche role that has already been outshined by Ronda. Why is that? Because Polymorph exists. So I didn't want to add this guy because I really don't know where to put him. His Ronda just completely messed up his viability. So did Sheep, but mostly Ronda. I would say if you asked me 4 months ago, he would be bottom of the S tier. Now, top of B or bottom of A. He really has dropped significantly. Can you still use him? For sure. If you do want to risk getting polymorphed, you can still use him, but his value has definitely tanked since blessings have been added to the game. The next champion we have is the login reward, Yaga the Insatiable. He is a poisoner. That's all he does. He poisons, and the unfortunate part is he does not poison well. So Yaga is a vault tier champion. Next we have Lady Eresh here. 25% really low chance of weaken on a single target ability. AoE, chance of granting an extra turn. If no extra turn, fills his champion's turn meter for each living enemy. Kind of weird, but okay. Stun set could be applicable there. Increase attack, increase crit damage, then extra turn. Passive places Perfect Veil on this buff for 2 turns whenever their champion drops below 50%. Garbage. Actual garbage. Vault tier once again. Usable for sure, but to even say that sounds sacrilegious. Next we have Shadowkin, Ninja, promotional champion. Defense down in the A1, increased turn meter. Awesome ability here. Applies HP burn and instantly activates HP burn. 3 times at random, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Also places Perfect Veil on this champion. The A3 is an AoE, 100% chance to freeze once fully booked when targeting a boss. Will only attack the boss, not all enemies. Will ignore 50% defense and decrease the cooldown of the A2 by 1 turn. Finally, his passive increases his attack up to 100% and his crit damage up to 25% each time a single enemy is hit by all 3 of Ninja's active skills in a single round. So this guy does damage. Like we see here, the effect can occur multiple times against the same enemy. So really good attack, low health, low defense, good speed. Protect this guy, and he's a king, so Ninja is going to be an S tier, and you can use him everywhere. I don't need to explain how good this guy is. Next, we have Yakarl, who can be bought from the clan shop, so I'm going to add him, just because if you really want to, you can get this guy over time. Attacks 1 enemy, chance to place a fear, ignores defense if they're under a freeze. Even A2, ignoring defense, dealing turn meter, another freeze condition for sure. A3 AoE has a chance to freeze for 1 turn. The chance increases to 100 with targets with 75% or more turn meter. The debuff cannot be resisted if they do meet that condition of 75% or more turn meter. Increase the damage inflicts for each champion in battle under a freeze effect. Also decreases damage done to Yakarl if for each champion under a freeze. Places unkillable on this champion whenever they kill an enemy under freeze. So this guy can pump. Has to do with freeze. His freeze generally isn't enough to keep the team under freeze. You have to kind of pair him up with somebody. So niche use champion, not completely garbage, definitely not. He was changed a little bit, so I would say the top of B tier. So that's going to conclude the list. Now let's have a look. You can tell me what you agree with and what you disagree with as well, for sure. Once again, tier list I'm not a huge fan of because there's so much customization available in this type of game where it's really hard to make any type of realistic, accurate, however you want to call it, tier list that's going to fit every single player. It's just really hard to make sense of it because every account's different. Every account has different goals. Every player has different goals, and to say one champion's going to be worse or better than another only really works in a setting like this because we're kind of grouping all 3 champions together. So for the S tier, Ronda, Arbiter, Scyl, Ghrush, Rhazin, Ultimate Death Knight, Lydia, Visix, Ninja. Pretty self-explanatory. I guess some people could say Ghrush shouldn't be there, being the only epic. I disagree. I've used him countless times on countless accounts for countless account takeovers, so it's not just my personal opinion. I've actually watched this guy succeed at the same level when they did have these other champions. A tier, Drexthar, Deliana, Khatun, Guurda, Tainix, Hateflower. B tier, Yakarl, Lord of the Legionary, Aleksandr, Broadmaw, Ultimate Death Knight. Dark Helen, as I call her, Arix. Vault tier, niche use, very, very niche, or just terrible. RelicKeeper, Cleopterix, Scion, Dark Athel, Yaga, and Lady Eresh. Who did I miss? I probably missed somebody, let me know. I did mention a few champions that I didn't add specifically. For Doom Tower, who would you have added? That was my problem. I didn't know who to add, so I'm kind of curious as to who you guys would have added for the Doom Tower, because some are good, some are really bad, and I didn't want to extend this to a C, D, and F tier. I think that would have made it too complex. I think 3 tiers is good with the Vault tier option, and I think you kind of understand what I mean by adding C, D when I start talking about Doom Tower for sure. So that's going to conclude this video. Give me your thoughts and feedback. If you enjoy this content, smash the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.